Welcome to another episode of the Power Connector podcast. I'm your host, Derek Dickow, where I sit and have what I call curiosity conversations, learning a little bit about my guests, trying to understand how they built their business, how they navigated the challenges of the day in their everyday career to be the CEO or in the position that they're in today. And joining me today is someone that I respect in business, Adam Lutz, who's the CEO and managing principal of Q10 Lutz Financial and Lutz Real Estate Investments. Welcome to the show, Adam. It's good to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I start this as a curiosity conversation because I'm just genuinely interested in what other people do and what people have built and understanding what they've done over the course of their career. So I like to start all of my conversations asking what I think is the most important question, which is what's new and exciting for you?
Well, commercial real estate is going through a transition right now. We're still in the early stages of that. The last few years, especially from 2020 through, I would say last summer of 22, was just a boom time for real estate. Apartments, I wouldn't say that for office buildings, but industrial's been hot, and shopping centers have been leasing up, not malls, but, strip centers. And financing was really aggressive. The interest rates were really low. And if you were smart and able to, put long-term debt on your properties at 3%, you're feeling pretty good right now. And so, we at Q10 Lutz, we're a mortgage banking firm and advise our clients. And we were begging a lot of our clients to put this long-term debt on with their life companies. At the time, you might have some prepayment issues because your debt was 4.5% or 6%. And to get out of that, you had to pay a prepayment penalty. The smart ones paid it, but locked in long-term debt. And the ones that were short-sighted waited too long. And interest rates rose at a pace we've never seen before. And it'll be really interesting over the next 18 months what develops here. Obviously, office is its own component that would require its own podcast. But there's a lot of floating rate debt out there where rates went, they're paying 200 over LIBOR, which was nothing. And now, it's at 4 or 5% plus 200. So they're paying 7, 8%. And it's causing, and you're starting to see some people go to their lenders and, say, hey, how are we going to handle this? There was, and we placed a lot of loans with what's called CLOs or debt funds, particularly on apartment loans over the last 3 years. And those groups were pricing, let's say, 350 to 400 over LIBOR or SOFR, which is now the metric. And so when we started that, SOFR was at 10 basis points. And now, again, it's up to 5%. So when you put those loans on, you had to buy a cap, an interest rate cap. And they were cheap. It was like no big deal. Well, with the rise, you have a lot of those interest rate caps expiring. Often there were 2-year terms. Some were 3-year terms, depending on pricing. And now that it's so far, above the cap, and you're going to have to pay the cap again at this low level, it's going to be really expensive. And there's going to be some decisions to be made, specifically in the apartment world, I would say.
So a lot of people are looking to either dispose of assets that they have or scrapping deals entirely.
Yeah, I think there'll be like a need for preferred equity to come in and recapitalize the deal. In some cases, put a new loan on it. There'll be some sales because, in a lot of cases, the rents have gone up. It's just they can't afford the debt when the caps expire.
So you've been a mortgage banking professional your entire life. You've always looked at numbers, right? This is not...
Actually, I started as a kid following my dad around the properties. My father, Eric Lutz, he worked for Showstack in the 70s with a great group of people there, and went on his own and had a portfolio here in Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Ann Arbor. So my Saturdays when I wasn't playing sports were following him around, particularly the apartment complexes. And he owned a few hotels, and watching him nitpick the physical condition of these and having nervous property managers follow around and writing down sheets of paper and, pointing out, he always liked to value add. He was really into marketing. He was kind of ahead of the curve at that time. And so that's how was my first introduction to real estate.
So your father took you around. Were you wearing hard hats or just kind of following him around? And
no, I was just following him around.
Yeah, and so he would, point out to the property managers, let's fix this, let's address that, opening kitchen cabinets. I mean, give me an idea for what kind of attention to detail.
A lot of it was landscaping to him and exterior appeal, I would say.
Yeah, that's an important part, right? That's the first thing that people see is how does the property look? Could I live here?
Yep.
And so you got your experience on Saturday mornings walking with Dad, and then at what point did you say, this is something that is interesting to me?
Well, in the early mid-'80s, I'm going back, there weren't as many real estate professionals. My friends' dads, there wasn't one. I knew the group, I could name them today, the Curlicks and Partridges and Showstacks, but it was a small handful of local developers that have been doing it. And it was a different era. And so it was appealing to me. My dad, did really well in the mid-'80s, bought a lot of great properties, built some properties in Birmingham, renovated the train station and brought in Norm's Eaton Street Station at that time. He did 220 renovation of that building. Behind that's Brown Street Center. He built that building. He assembled the land where the Townsend is, and his partner ended up developing that, Tony Brown. And he owned a lot of buildings in Birmingham that you walk by every day. And so he branched into Ann Arbor way before anyone else really did. So he had some notoriety then, which was kind of exciting. Personally, I'm not one that thrives in the limelight. He enjoyed it at that time. So it was exciting. And it was something that I thought I would definitely want to get into. I worked in high school, I worked at his office. I changed after school into a suit and tie and helped around the office. I'm not sure how helpful I was, but I tried. And it was exciting. And, unfortunately, he got invested into hotels and he got involved with the Savings and Loan Bank. And you're a little young for that era, but this is like 1989, 1990. And they came after him for everything he had when the RTC stepped in. And it was devastating to him and my family. And so I tried to escape. I tried to think of what else I wanted to do since this was my mindset my whole life. And I ended up following some guys are a few years older than me, Matt Curlick and Ross Partridge, they went to NYU's kind of new and up-and-coming real estate school and a master's. And so that appealed to me, was to move to New York and try to learn more from the master's program and see where that took me.
Yeah. So it was a devastating blow to the family in the late 80s, the savings and loan scandal. If I remember that correctly, right?
It's tough because, my dad was he was a marketing guy. He was the first guy really going radio for advertising his properties. He had big newspaper ads. When Brown Street Center, which is the office building behind 220, was built, he had a huge party. He really knew how to market and sell the real estate, and whether it was an office building or apartment buildings, he had a knack to him. And then to see him suffer so badly was, gut-wrenching. And there were some negative articles about him in the paper, and it was tough for him, especially, obviously, and tough to be his son, watching him go through it, and to know that times got really tough. So, it was a pretty important part of my life.
So then you get a master's degree out in NYU, cultivating relationships, some connection here to Metro Detroit you mentioned the Curlick family, and Ross Partridge, who I know in the manufacturing housing business. And then you decide in New York, I'm going to come back and dive into the business, or give me an idea.
No, I loved New York. I was thriving. I thought that I was an insomniac when I was younger, but realized I was just a New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the lifestyle. And I was fortunate because the first job I had was with some of the original Wall Street firms that were getting into commercial real estate finance.
Mm-hmm.
The timing was just great for me. And I worked for probably the most highly well-known early mid-90s Wall Street firm, Nomura. And Nomura was known because it had a big leader that kind of set the tone for Wall Street. His name was Ethan Penner, and he's still around today. But he created an exciting workplace, dynamic workplace where young people, I was probably the youngest at 22 or 3, but everyone was in their 20s, and everyone's working really hard and going for it and traveling to see properties, and we're building it from scratch. And that was new to real estate finance, because prior to that, it was a pretty stodgy existence. It was a couple of correspondents. It had life companies, and there was a lot fewer lenders involved, and it was kind of a slow moving process. And this just changed the whole game for real estate. And they started to make loans on some properties that were tougher at the time to make, whether it was hotels or properties in the South that had gone through some of the recessions of the early 90s, whether it was manufactured housing, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, that was a huge source of capital in the early to mid 90s for that group. So it was a really exciting time to work there.
At what point do you decide to come back to Michigan and start a new chapter here and work back with your father?
Well, I was there for about 6 years working, and to not have a family in New York City it grew tiresome. And I would say for the last year and a half I worked there, every phone call my father was like, I really think you should come back. I think it's time. Things are, turning around. He had gotten into some other ancillary businesses besides just development. He started a mortgage banking business. He was doing office and retail leasing, and he's like, I really could use you. And the timing wasn't right for me to do that. But as I got more and more burnt out of working crazy hours and going out at night, and I had met my future wife, eventually he caught me at the right time, and I decided I thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I went for it and moved back home. And I was fortunate to move back to a city where I had like a really core group of friends that all moved back here as well. So, there's some gaps in some age groups, particularly those a little bit younger than me, who never came back. I was just fortunate that some of my best friends all, relocated here. So there was a comfort zone when I moved back here.
Yeah, I think my generation is infamous for, getting educated in Michigan, going to state, and then moving to Chicago, Miami, or New York. Very few have come back. Very few come back or want to, but it's nice to see that your generation kind of set the stage and then took this commercial real estate and mortgage industry to the next level on the commercial side. So you come back to, you want to say like mid 90s?
It was 99.
99. Okay, so 99.
There was a big event called Long-Term Capital, which was blew out the debt industry for a while. And after that, I was like, it's time to move. So,
what was getting your first deal like?
As a mortgage banker?
Yeah.
Well,
let me stop you there. So you are an entrepreneur, in my opinion, because you do a lot of things. Entrepreneurs suffer from, they're just interested in so many different areas in business. So you're the CEO of your company, managing partner, you're an investor, you're a leader, you're a CFO, you're a COO. You do a lot. You wear a lot of hats within the company. When you came back in 1999-ish, and you had your first opportunity, your first big break, what was that?
Well, there's really a few things that went on there. So the first thing was I wanted to buy properties. That was one of the reasons my dad came back. And we had been doing mortgage banking, and as I said, the pool of ownership was a lot shallower than it is today. And so I went to try to make an offer to buy a piece of real estate, and A broker in my office brought it in from another buyer. And it happened again, and I backed away from it. And happened again. And so my background in New York was traveling to different cities around the country. For a while, I was stationed in San Francisco and handled the West Coast, and enjoyed learning new markets that I thought were exciting. And so, I started to look out of state, not to compete with our own clients locally. There's some firms locally here that do that. I don't think it's right, really, to compete with your own clients. So, my first deal that I bought actually came over on a fax, and it was in Philadelphia, suburban Philadelphia, Westchester, Pennsylvania, and it was a shopping center, and that's where my in-laws are from. That's where my wife grew up. So I sent over my father-in-law to drive out to Westchester, and he drove it, and he took some pictures, whatever, and sent it, via mail, the pictures. And anyway, it just was fortuitous because we had a relationship with the original developer there. He'd come to Detroit to open some stores, and he actually had developed the center. He's like, you should buy it. And so we ended up buying that shopping center, and it turned out to be a home run. It took many years, but we took the local grocer down. We brought in a big giant supermarket, and it was a big success. So that helped catapult my investments out of state. From the mortgage banking side, what really changed the game for us was when we joined. We were Lutz Capital, and we were doing deals with friends of mine that I had from New York. But if we heard, I'm going to make up a name, Morgan Stanley was doing a lot of X, Y, and Z, I'd have to call up, I didn't know them, and say, oh, I'm Adam Lutz, Lutz Capital, Detroit. Like, not that interested. One-off shop from Detroit, how much business are we going to do? They had big volume thresholds they got to hit. So we joined in 2003 with a group that had formed, which was about 15 offices, individual owners of their offices, but came together almost like a cooperative to share resources. And that was a game changer for us, not only for our clients, because we got exposure to so many more lenders, because we were ICAP. We weren't just Lutz Capital, and we would get referrals on this intranet, and everyone would talk to each other. And it also allowed us to bring on some higher quality mortgage bankers and analysts, because there was a more sophisticated level to it. We were doing more volume, and it kind of launched that business as well.
And that was you cultivating relationships with these family offices and high net worth folks, or?
No. So it was just you're talking about the mortgage banking?
The group.
Yeah, the group, the Q10, the ICAP group was, they were offices like ours. Some of them had been Prudential mortgage correspondents for 20, 30 years. And Prudential pulled that correspondency and became a direct lender. So they were left scrambling, because that was the meat and potatoes of their businesses. So a bunch of them came together and say, hey, we're all separate, but let's work together with marketing and advertising and have meetings at the mortgage banking convention. And we had a president, and it kind of launched our post-closing servicing department. So that's kind of how it operated.
Tell me a little bit about how you manage personalities with a group of folks, sophisticated, that are all coming together, investing dollars. And the personality conflicts are a real thing, especially in the investor pool, right? Egos are always involved.
Yeah.
And you seem to have a way for, getting the right people to the right table for deals. How do you manage relationships?
I would say I've learned a lot from others of how they handle situations, and try to think of those moments in the past when things have arisen that don't always go your way, and how you handle it. But I've learned just innately from spending so much time with my father, a lot of wisdom and personality, and I've tried to apply that as I've moved forward. I'm not a hands-on micromanager at all. I'm much more the opposite. I'd rather have casual one-on-one conversations about, let's say, the brokers in my office, their deals or what's going on. And, I'm not one that sets meetings and, hits. I'd rather do it casually. And so I try to have a casual nature, but when I speak, I believe that it comes across that I have the wisdom, experience, and knowledge to assist in whatever we're discussing. Through my real estate ownership side, it's helped my mortgage banking side and my clients and the firm's clients, because I've owned office buildings, shopping centers, and flex business parks. And in 2009, I had fortunately sold some of those things around the country, but whatever I was left with, got hit really hard. So I've suffered from those the downturns, which is painful, but you learn quite a bit and how to rebuild from there. And so I think there's a balance between knowledge, experience, patience with the people you're talking to, and humor. I tend to be lighthearted. I try to be engaging and to whoever I'm talking to. What is their personality like, and adapt to that person. So, but I think humor is, and I'm not a very aggressive person. I prefer to be quiet confidence.
I like that. What tell me about the biggest lesson you learned in rebuilding after 2009. So you had the vantage point of seeing what happened to your father in '89. You fast forward 20 some years later, and tell me what was the biggest lesson for you.
The biggest lesson was how quickly it can turn. I mean, it was like we had really successful business parks down in Tampa and Atlanta and Raleigh, great markets. They were still up and coming at the time. We were probably ahead of the curve. And I mean, we went from 95% occupancy to 60s in like a minute. Just companies went out of business. It's probably more true because they were flex business parks. There wasn't like a lot of credit per se, but a lot of bigger users. But in particular in Tampa, we had like the landscaping firms or the insurance brokers are all tied to residential, and boom, they were all closed their doors so fast you couldn't before you blinked. And then and then trying to work it out, and we tried to keep all the properties that we could, but a lot of them had been done with conduit loans, so they're all different B-piece buyers you had to deal with, different personalities, and some were more successful than others. But you learn then to fight on two battles, in defense and also try to play offense. Because as we were getting out of it, we had to keep going. So, the acquisition team started, early on trying to figure out what the next step would be and how we would get through it. So.
A lot of people get emotionally tied to properties, especially during times of tragedies or rate hikes and stuff like that. Have you found that you've been able to separate yourself from that sort of emotional connection to properties, or is it just?
Yeah, I think being particularly an out-of-state landlord, I've never grown. I was never like that committed to any one property. We'd always bought and sold some things. Bought some stuff in Minneapolis and Philadelphia and Atlanta, and we bought, fixed them, dressed them up, remarketed them, and then sold them. So I always had that kind of a transactional mentality.
With people, though, you're not. It's opposite for people. Direct connection with others. It's not a transactional. I mean, the real estate side is transactional, but the people side is very relational. And you've developed relationships with a lot of your colleagues and people in business that have lasted 25, 30 years or more. What's been some of your secret to your strategies there?
Humor. I don't know if there's a secret. I just try to be myself. And again, I think I have a warm personality, not threatening. I could be stern if need be, but I'm not a demanding friend or a demanding employer. I like accountability, but in our office has always been like a family atmosphere. My dad fostered that, throughout his career, and even people leave, they still, embrace us when we see them in the streets or wherever. Most of the people I think all speak very highly of their experiences and what they learned and are appreciative. So, in the mortgage banking, until recently we had, several people that have been there over 20 years. One was 25 years. So I think people enjoy working in our office, and we try to make it fun. For a couple of years, when our office was on Brown and Old Woodward, we used to have an annual Dream Cruise party because we were right in the thick of it, and that was a blast. We had 500, 1,000 people would come by for our barbecue, and
I think I've been there one time.
Yeah. It was pretty fun, and I think it's those type of things that I think are important, and create an environment where your staff wants to be there. If it's investors want to come or clients, it's warm and inviting, I think, is important.
So it's important for you to have a warm, inviting environment, calm demeanor. You like to leverage humor in your personality to cultivate relationships with people. Externally, do you take a different approach, or is it kind of like everybody that comes to you gets the same Adam?
I think I'm pretty consistent with friendships and with work. Yeah, I try to be sincere of who I am, and this is what you get. Either if you don't like it, then we don't have to be friends. I think most people do, so I'm pretty happy.
Now you've got a
with my relationships with whether it's work or with friendships. So
yeah, you got a great reputation with people that service you, the people that do business with you, and your partners, which is important, and they're substantial people. So that doesn't happen overnight, right? It's years of consistency and years of being who you are that makes people want to do more with you. Tell me what has helped you along your career, helped you build your confidence.
I'm going to say, I've always had inner confidence. I've always felt like, obviously early on I didn't know a lot, but I learned pretty quickly, and I was excited to learn whether it's new asset classes or new markets. And so I feel like I'm dealing from a knowledge base that makes me very secure in what I know. I've seen, I've experienced leasing. I've experienced whether it's office or retail or, urban. I've done historic tax credits. I've done facade easements. I have a pretty deep experience base. And so I have a lot to offer clients, or, if an investor wants to invest in a deal, I think I'm very thorough and forthwith, and I think the people that have repeatedly invested with me have known that I'm always honest, and if there's an issue, which deals don't go as they're always on paper. So I've always been communicative, letting them know. And, I think, we have had situations in, mortgage banking where things didn't go as we had expected, but, we all hopefully pull together and figure out ways to get the deals closed, which is the most important. But, there's some tensions that get high, especially in acquisitions when, things don't pan out in due diligence. And how do you handle those situations? And, I've been there myself, so I feel like it makes me a better partner and advisor as a mortgage banker in those circumstances.
So there are opportunities as on the real estate investment side, where you take to the market and you raise money from friends, family, high net worth individuals, and you're the general partner and you're structuring the deal. What for you is the most challenging part of that process?
Finding the deals. Once I have control of a deal, and it's pretty much second nature from there. It gets hard when you transition the management over, et cetera. But because you always find out stuff that you didn't know just through, jumping in and doing third-party reports. But I would say finding the deals is the toughest part. It used to be, in the early 2000s, I had started to develop a reputation in certain markets where I bought stuff. And at that time, I had a very deep, specific money partner who would fund all the equity. So I was speaking from strength because I knew he would put it up if the deal made sense. But we'd be like one of 3 or 5 groups bidding on, I'll just say, an office building in Center City, Philadelphia, or in Buckhead, Atlanta. Like, it wasn't today with the internet and the blasting and the equity funds that have been raised and pension funds putting out so much money. It was a lot easier to secure deals. It's like if you wanted the deal, sometimes you had to stretch, or you would bow out, but it was more of a true conversation with the broker. And today it's just really transactional for the most part, and it's tough. It's really hard to find deals. The last few years I've taken a pause and kind of stayed on the sidelines and sold one of my bigger properties in Miami, and have been waiting. And I think that time to find new deals is about to come to fruition, and I think there'll be opportunities, and I'm excited about that.
So it's challenging to find deals because everybody has real-time access to this stuff, and you're competing. This is a competition pool. You mentioned earlier it was so narrow, and today everybody can become an investor or a syndicator, and so you're competing at a higher level in real time.
Yeah.
So you almost have to, if I'm hearing you right, you almost have to cultivate relationships with people that trust you, have confidence in your work and your ability to close. Are they always coming from the banking world? Are they coming?
No, not yet, at least. But no, they're mostly through brokers. Some brokers have brought me some stuff off market, but it's at this point, the brokers control what gets sold, and so either you focus in certain markets or whatever, you develop a relationship with certain brokers. They know you, so when you're really interested in a deal, they know you're real and you're going to perform. So it's building those relationships.
Give me a little insight on how you build relationships with these brokers. Outside of, don't give me any IP, but give me some ideas for what are some strategies that you might implement that's been really successful to you?
The main point is to go tour a property, whether or not you're going to buy it or not, and strike a personal relationship with that broker. And maybe grab lunch after, or see if you can grab a drink with them later. You have to develop a personal relationship to really stand out. Tons of people take tours, but then they say see you later, they move on. I've really worked at the markets, when I'm interested in buying it, developing a rapport with a specific broker or two or three, and really kind of riding them and their experiences. And because when a deal comes that meets your profile, they're going to let you know, hey, take a look at this, and they're pulling for you.
So you demonstrate a commitment by showing up. You take a tour of the property, but then you take it a step further, take them out to lunch or breakfast, and develop a little bit more of a personal relationship. And during the breakfast or lunch, you're not talking numbers. You're talking about the important stuff.
Just life,
family, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No numbers at all. The deal's not important at that point. It's just building a relationship.
Do you have any insights on what are some of the ideas that you might approach in a conversation? I mean, for me, I love to talk about people's family. I like to learn about their family, learn a little bit more about their history. Where they're from is always interesting to me. Are there some things that you default to in a conversation that get you real comfortable?
I kind of give what the conversation takes. I don't have like a hit list, if you will, of subjects. I love to ask intriguing questions and maybe push the envelope with a little humor and see where it goes. But I think that's what sets you apart. They remember you. They enjoy your company, and then they want to do business with you. So
I like that approach. I think that is a good separator, right? Most people would just be in and out, look at the numbers. Does this fit into my box? But you're willing to go the extra step to help develop a personal relationship. I think that's important. What is, outside of your father and some of the relationships that you've built, who has been an important mentor to you that has helped in times of need for you?
Well, early on in my first job, I had two bosses that were major characters. So the firm, I was doing work at Nomura, but my firm that was like subcontracted was owned by a old school mortgage banking firm called Cooper Horowitz, and they kind of revolutionized mortgage banking in the 60s and 70s. And when I was there, they were probably both in their, one was probably late 60s and the other one was early 70s. And I learned so much just from how they looked at real estate and looked at deals. I would go, and I was probably the first guy in the office that had like a computer that would go in and, put together spreadsheets and then come in with numbers. And one of the owners came in to me, Howard Cooper. He's like, the answer's not in the computer. That's what he kept going after. The answer's not in the computer. And then I would take the numbers that I ran. It took me 2 hours, and I would run into Barry Horowitz' office, who was probably the biggest character in real estate finance to ever live, who would be smoking his 12th cigar of the day and chewing on it and like spitting. And he's just an old school. He was immaculately dressed with a suit, just chewed cigars, talked to people like an old school broker. And he would do he would take numbers. He'd say, what's the rent? What's this? What's that? Boom, boom, boom. And he'd come to the same exact loan that I spent 2 hours going through numbers. He just had the innate ability to really break it down just from knowledge of, oh, that deal's in Queens, it's this rent, it's that cap rate, it's this expense, boom. And so, you learned that how to look through the weeds and not just look at the numbers per se, and have an innate sense of what real estate's worth and what it could be worth. He was really, he also taught me about day drinking. He would take the train in and he would take the train home. So at lunchtime, if he had one drink, one martini, he would come back and he would tell you jokes, or he'd get lenders on the phone and you'd be laughing. If he had 2 drinks, it'd go either way on you. The 3rd drink, he would get ornery and get mad. And then it was time to stay in your office. So I went out one time with him for some martinis, and I'm 22, 23 years. And I was asleep at my desk, I think, within like 5 minutes. So I learned early on not to day drink, but that teaches you things. I mean, it's a different world. I mean, it was a different time, different era, but it worked for him. So
the value of the day drink, one, right? One would be, anything more than one is a little bit, it gets a little excessive. It can get a little crazy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned these 2 gentlemen. How about locally? How about today? So, you're an established guy, you got a big company, you got a couple Q10 Lutz and Lutz financial or real estate investments. How about today? Do you cultivate relationships with mentors that are important to you? Do you still have mentors?
Yeah, I still have, one of my close friends and mentors, more like a brother to me. His name's Andy Milia. He worked for my father as his right-hand man and partner from mid-'80s. And then late 90s, he got into land development. So he kind of pursued that, but he stayed in our office. We were partners in the land deals and the original ones with him. And he has always been my go-to if I have any questions at all. He's really, he's very logical and breaks things down for you and helps you think them through. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And I would say he's probably my most influential mentor that I've had.
So you're still cultivating relationships, even at your stage?
I try to, yeah. I've tried to work hard over the last few years in particular to get back out and make a point to take people golfing, meet for a drink, meet for lunch. Every week I try to set up a few different, think outside the box. And people generally are happy to hear from you, and they always end up, you bring something up and it leads to something else that you didn't expect. And so yeah, I've been really working hard at that since, probably I was really busy in 21, so 22, 23, had a little more time. People love coming to our office in Birmingham, walking to the restaurants. So that's something I've really worked hard on the last, year and a half.
Would you categorize people into different, like maybe somebody that's above you, somebody that could be a center of influence, and then maybe somebody that looks up to you? Do you have different categories of people that you might cultivate these kind of relationships with?
I try to mix it up for sure. Yeah.
What have you found is the best piece of advice to someone that's coming up?
Do the same. Reach out, be aggressive. Don't be hesitant to make that call or to reach out and ask someone to get together. Even if it's just stopping by their office, or because the more people you meet, you develop a rapport with, the more things come out of it long term. I would say especially for young people, and I was certainly guilty of it. I was like in a rush to buy deals and finance this and a longer term perspective is really important. And very few people have it, especially people that are in their 20s today. You know, they want instant gratification.
They want it tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've struggled with that. We've hired some people, and I let them go pretty quickly because they just didn't want to work. You know, they just wanted to get results. They don't want to put the time in. So, you know, I quickly recognize that and tell them it's not a good fit.
What have you found to be the most challenging issue with today's corporate culture, today's talent pool that you see?
You know, it's been really hard to find those people that want to stay long term and have that long term perspective. We've always had it in our company, and there's just a lot of jumping around these days, and the grass is always greener, or they think it is. You know, I've had people take a job, sign the offer letter, and then 2 weeks later, the day before they're supposed to start, sorry, I took another job. That's happened twice to me in the last few months. It's like there's ramifications to what you do and how you act, and I don't think that some of the younger people grasp that. But it affects, I'm a smaller business, and, we got it all set up for you. We're ready for you as you're starting, and, we've laid it out and then not to show. It's a hole, and that means more often than not, I'm jumping in to do things that I, hired someone else to hopefully help me with. So
it's a challenge, in not just in your business, but in every industry that we see. People will ghost. They'll come back and say, "Yeah, shake your hand. I'm here to work," and then disappear. I think if we look back maybe 100 years ago, people did one thing for a long time, right? It was maybe they were a farmer, they were a tradesperson. These days the technology is advancing things so very fast for people that the younger generation, they just lose interest. I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I understand opportunities move and you have to adapt, but at the same time, it's like you expect to see a little bit more out of the younger generation. That's something that I'd like to see a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I found a few really good, hardworking young people, and I'm excited to have them and to teach them, and you can see they want to learn and grow, and they're willing to work hard. And once you find one of those these days, you just hold on to them and cultivate that so they want to stay long term.
You mentioned earlier that your father was cutting edge with his marketing and his approach to advertising and marketing the sites and properties. How are you leveraging some of what's available today into your practice? There's Chat GPT, there's artificial intelligence, there's social media. I mean, there's like a million things and ways that you can communicate with people. Have you found any of these to be real interesting and supportive to your day-to-day tasks?
I would say it's most helpful in property management of some apartments we own, and the different, whether it's, there's so many different options to get in front of people. I found though that when we've had third parties in the past, they are kind of lazy, and they just say, "Oh, we're paying Google this," or and they're paying so much more than they need to because they don't really refine the SEO or whatever else the mechanisms are to attract eyes to the site. I mean, you can't underestimate how many people look for, let's say, apartments online, because it's crazy. But you have to do other things. You have to get in the marketing. We still go out, meet with businesses and, meet with hospitals and meet with the universities in the area, because that it does work to still get out and meet people, which is, something we always did. You can't take out an ad in a newspaper anymore, like you used to, and get some good leads. But you can't just pay to play and expect you're going to be full of, in your occupancy. From the mortgage banking perspective, we probably could do a better job getting out there. I know, LinkedIn is a major influence. I don't know how many deals people get per se from it as a mortgage banking, but it's definitely something we as a company need to do better. And maybe part of it is because I'm so busy and I can barely keep up with my emails and now the texts, and I don't know if which I'm supposed to be looking at, my screen, my iPad, my phone. It's mind numbing. To then go on at night and look at LinkedIn. For me, it's just, I'm done. Now I know when I do go on it and I see all these people on it and what they're posting, what they're doing, it's a whole community that seems a really effective tool that my firm needs to do a better job of.
I think everybody can find some better tools to help their business advantage what they're working on. I don't think anything replaces the face-to-face forever. I think ChatGPT, AI, all these tools are great, and you can use them, and you could spend time, and you can commit talent on your team to handle some of these things. But nothing replaces the on-site, shaking hand, pressing the flesh, taking people to breakfast or lunch or golf as you do. I think that will never be replaced. I think people need a sense of community. They like to see people, and if you can bring a personality to it as well, then they walk away from the conversation feeling better about their day. So I think that will never change.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, we can all learn something from you today. Is there anything else that you want to share with us that you're focused on or excited about over the next 24 months?
No, actually, what has been good is to hire has been really, really tough. I mean, impossible. And people wanted the moon. I've seen that change over the last few months, and I'm excited. We're planning on bringing on a few younger, aggressive people that with some experience, and that was hard to come by last 3 years. But I think that's changing, and people want to make a long-term commitment more than they did, and I'm excited about bringing on some younger blood and teach them and grow their businesses.
I'll ask you one last question, just because we're talking about family business here as well. So your father started the company 50 years ago. He's still in the business today. I'm sure he still has a desk and is still doing deals. He's one of those guys that's going to do deals until the very end, right?
No, unfortunately, he's not doing any more deals. He does have an office, but he doesn't come in very often, no.
And so what does the future for Q10 Lutz look like? Are your children going to get into the business? Do you have...
No, I'm hoping to cultivate some of the people that are there, and some people I'm looking forward to bringing on, and make it just a group thing. I don't see my kids being in real estate. One wants to be in sports broadcasting. He's down learning that at the University of Miami. My daughter's in fashion in New York, and my other son, we'll have to see where he goes, but I'm sure it'll be something
you never
unique
know.
and exciting. Yeah. I don't see real estate in his future. I think I see bigger things, maybe like a sports agent, or he's a personality and a good one.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, he got it from his father, for sure.
He's way more charismatic than me.
Is he?
Yeah.
I look forward to meeting him. You should bring him to the program.
Yeah, I should do that, yeah.
Well, it's been an honor to sit with today Adam Lutz, CEO, Managing Principal at Q10 and Lutz Real Estate Investments. And appreciate the time today, the conversation. It was insightful, learning your story, learning what's important to you, and hopefully walking away with a few nuggets to help you better your business and your career. Thank you for joining us on the Power Connector podcast. I'm your host, Derek Dickow. We'll see you soon.